There's a reason why this visit is getting so much press, why the expectations are so high. Because this could be the start, like I said, of a new paradigm. I'll tell you why I say this. India-Europe relations have been caught in some sort of a jinx. There's a lot of potential, but very little results. For instance, bilateral trade. It's worth almost $110 billion. That's the trade between India and Europe, $110 billion. And yet, there is no free trade agreement. India and Europe announced a strategic partnership way back in 2004. That was almost 18 years back. There are student exchanges, cultural exchanges, but something's always been missing, sort of like an X factor. Compare that to India-US ties or India-UK ties, if you like. They have taken off in the last decade. So why not the European Union? A couple of reasons. Number one, Europe as a united bloc is a recent phenomenon. In the first 40 years of India's independence, Europe was a continent divided. Western Europe backed America. Eastern Europe backed the Soviet Union. There was no single entity to deal with. When the Cold War ended, two things happened. And this is very interesting. One, Europe organized itself into a bloc. And two, India liberalized its economy. It was a perfect chance to build something big. Instead, it became a lost opportunity. Reason number two, Europe was slow to recognize India's importance. I'm talking about the European Union as a whole, not individual member states, and that equation was always strong. India buys weapons from France. India trades extensively with Germany. So with individual countries, the relationship is solid. But as a whole, the EU was short-sighted on India. Compare that to Russia or China. The European Union has signed joint trade agreements with both. Energy deals. That level of cooperation never happened with India. And this visit could change that. But what has triggered this change? In simple words, reality has hit home on both sides. Until now, Europe enjoyed the unipolar world. American money, American weapons, American protection. Washington was like their godfather. But even godfathers can be vulnerable. You have China challenging the US in the Indo-Pacific. You have Russia in Ukraine. So Europe has been forced to look out for itself, to chart its own course. Just look at their recent policies. More involvement in the Indo-Pacific, more defense spending, murmurs of a European army. What does all of this mean? It means that Europe is stepping out of America's shadows. And now is the right time for India to engage, to create an independent India-Europe partnership, not just an offshoot of India-US ties. In Brussels, there's a similar realization about India, the world's largest democracy, a counterweight to China, plus an economic powerhouse. Simply put, Europe cannot ignore India's rise anymore, and that explains the reset. But will this reset lead to tangible results? That's another question. Most experts are focused on two things, trade and security. Those are going to be key. The India-EU free trade deal could be a game changer. Both sides have set a new deadline to conclude the talks. That's 2024. That's the deadline. The second priority is security. Europe is hoping for more cooperation in the Indo-Pacific, more interoperability between armies, more weapons purchases. I know it sounds pretty good, but one thing can derail all these prospects, and that is Russia's war in Ukraine. So Europe has two options here. Option number one, respect India's position on the war, basically de-hyphenate Russia and the rest of it. The second option is to pressurize India, to try and force India to criticize Putin's war. If Europe chooses option number two, that is criticizing India, it will be counterproductive, especially looking at their own record. Europe continues to buy Russian gas worth billions. Every day they pay up to 800 million euros to Russia, every day. Germany is leading the way. 40% of their natural gas comes from Russia. Their companies are open to paying Putin in rubles. What's more, Chancellor Olaf Scholz is unsure about sending weapons to Ukraine. Last week, he agreed to send tanks and rockets, but Ukraine wants more. More weapons, more sanctions, and more leadership. But Chancellor Scholz is not willing to step up. Well, here's what he says. I take my decisions fast and in concert with our partners. This is the German leader saying. I find hasty actions and maverick German efforts questionable. You know what's maverick? Single-handedly funding Putin's war. Because that's what Germany is doing. Some countries in Eastern Europe are not happy about this, like Poland or the Baltic states. They want Germany to get tough. And this will be another challenge to India-Europe relations, the divisions within. Because the European experiment depends on unity, more integration, more political coordination. But right now, Europe is divided. They can't even decide on how to deal with Vladimir Putin, and that could derail Europe's ambitions. Unlike India or America or China, Europe does not have a single power center. Power flows from all 27 member states. Imagine getting 27 states to agree on hundreds of policy matters. It's a nightmare. If Europe can navigate those pitfalls, it can emerge as an independent powerhouse. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.